Hi, so I wanted to talk a little bit today about the differences between INFPs and ISFPs because I think that it can be easy to mistake the two, especially if an ISFP has really well developed introverted intuition as their third function. So, for me, the easiest way to make the distinction between those two types is the vibe that each of them give off, for lack of a better word. Um, and for me, ISFPs, it's almost as if they represent archetypes in their physical form, with their bodies and how they look, the clothes they wear, how they act, and even their eyes sometimes you can tell. So, for example, Marilyn Monroe is a really famous ISFP, and she is a modern representation essentially of Aphrodite in the feminine form and all of these things. And she's become an archetype in essentially modern Western culture of that. And it's the same thing that was going on thousands of years ago in ancient Greece. It's just this is the modern form of it, and that's what she represents. Um, and everybody knows the famous image of her standing above the sewer grate or whatever it is, and her dress is blowing up. Everybody knows this picture. Um, and also somebody like Jimi Hendrix and the famous video and photos of him lighting his guitar on fire on stage, which this is a Freudian concept, but the urge to destroy and the urge to create is something that goes on within each of us and on a societal level as well, which is kind of what his action of destroying his guitar after he's performed and been creative, he just goes and destroys it. So it represents that conflict that we have. Um, and like I said, that's a Freudian concept, the life instinct and death instinct. Um, but they represent those things with their physical body and their actions and how they look. And I think that INFPs are more likely to write about the archetypes and talk about the archetypes rather than being representations of them. Um, and with somebody like Marilyn Monroe, she very clearly understood that she was a sex symbol, right? She understood this. And so there's intent there, even though I don't think she particularly enjoyed it all the time. If you read about her, she was actually a pretty intelligent woman and a very empathic person, and there's a lot of pain there. um, but yeah, INFPs are more likely to kind of want to talk about, oh, why is this a representation of this idea, rather than becoming that intentionally. Um, and I think another difference between the two types is that I think ISFPs overall they're a little bit more dark and mysterious, because they have the capability just to kind of look as if they see the world for what it is, with their combination of functions, which I think can be, maybe a little bit off-putting and maybe slightly dangerous for some people if they, if somebody understands the world for what it is. And INFPs, there's the stereotype that, oh, they're too precious for this world and they're cute little cinnamon rolls. So it's kind of a very different stereotype, even if an INFP does understand the world and how it works. They still, I think, overall will look a little bit more cute and innocent than an ISFP will. And also the whole idea of ISFPs representing archetypes, I think this is perhaps a contributing factor to why when you read heroes' journeys stories, which in and of itself is an archetypal type of story that's kind of represented in every culture and lasted for many thousands of years. There's many examples of this because it's a story that we all have to deal with in one way or another. Oftentimes the protagonist in these stories will be ISFP. For example, Harry Potter, and in Game of Thrones, Jon Snow, he's an ISFP, which it's also interesting because, when I say that INFPs are more likely to write about these things than to be them, George R. R. Martin is INFP, and Jon Snow, main character, ISFP. Which isn't to say that INFPs can't become representations of ideas, because, for example, George Orwell has become a representation of the resistance against authoritarianism and against Big Brother and the surveillance state and everything else. But it's more his ideas about, and what he wrote are those. And by extension, he himself is a representation of that. It's not his physical being a representation of the resistance against that. It's his work. So I think that's the distinction that I'm trying to make. And like I said, it can be easy if an ISFP has well-developed introverted intuition to want to type them as intuitive, because I think that ISFPs might be the most intuitive of the sensing types. But it's a little bit, it's different, and that's what I'm trying to communicate. So yeah, that would be the main difference, is kind of representing an archetype versus wanting to talk about the archetypes. And I'm not going to get into kind of the function by function difference, because that's been done many, many times by people who can articulate it much better than I can. So yeah, that's my kind of brief ramblings on that in my low budget video. So thank you for watching if you've made it this far. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I would love to hear about any of those. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a good day.